Thank you so much. Good morning. How are you all? We'll see. So why are we here? We're here because it's good for us from time to time to step back from who we are and where we are and what we're doing and take another look at who we are and where we are and what we're doing. If we don't do that, we tend to get caught up in our own little worlds. Very dangerous place to be. If you got kids, say, uh-huh. Your kids ever get caught up in their own little worlds? It's your job, right? Draw them out of their own little worlds to give them a bigger view of life, a bigger view of themselves, a bigger view of the world, And of course, God as Father wants to do the same thing for you and me. He wants to draw us out of our own little worlds, to give us a bigger view of life, a bigger view of ourselves, a bigger view of Him. And so we come away, we step away, we read over and over in the scriptures about Jesus going to a place set apart. And today, this is a place set apart. Yes or yes? Yeah, and that's a good thing. It's good for us. It's healthy for us from time to time to go to a place set apart, to think about who we are and what we're here for and what matters most and what matters least. In the scriptures, there's so many great stories, but I think sometimes when we read the Bible, we suck all the humanity out of it, and then it gets boring. It gets boring. Seriously, you suck all the humanity out of it, it gets boring. And there's a great story in the New Testament, one of my favorite stories in the New Testament. After Jesus rose from the dead, but before the ascension, the disciples, they went fishing one night. If you remember that story, say, uh-huh. Okay, so the disciples, they go out fishing one night, and they come back in the morning, and who shows up? Does anyone remember? Right, Jesus shows up, and what did Jesus say? Anyone remember that? What did you catch? All right, that's not a direct quote, but yes, that's the essence of what Jesus said. What did you catch? And what did the disciples say? Anyone remember that? Right, we got nothing, Jesus. And what did Jesus say? Right, go back out there, you pack of loser disciples, and catch some fish. All right, he didn't say that. But he did say, go back out. Did he say, hey guys, listen, I'm getting ready to get on out of here, up into heaven with the Father, so nudge the boats off the shore just a little bit. Let me do all my crazy God stuff, fill your boats with fish, break the nets, and let everyone know I'm God again. Did he say that? No, he didn't say that. He said, take the boats out into the deep water and let down your nets for a great catch. Not just a catch, great catch. Now, like I say, when we suck all the humanity out of it, we think, oh yeah, I heard that one 100 times. Hope Father's got a good homily. Thanks, that was a joke. So I always appreciate when 1 out of 1,500 people laughs at my jokes. It's usually my goal, 1 out of 1,500. Think about it again, all right? Let's take a look at the story. Let's put the humanity back into the story. Disciples been out there fishing all night, right? How are they feeling? They're tired, right? They've been out there fishing all night. They come back, they're tired, they didn't catch anything, so what else are they feeling? Frustrated, defeated, dejected, discouraged. Jesus says, let's try that again, guys. You can imagine what the disciples might have wanted to say. It's not recorded in the scriptures. It is not recorded in the scriptures. But maybe something like, oh, come on, preacher boy, we've been out there fishing all night, and there's no fish. We know how to fish, Jesus. I mean, it's the only thing we knew before you showed up. I mean, you taught us some great stuff, Jesus, but the fishing, can't that be our thing? Can't that one thing be our thing? Can't we just have one thing for ourselves? Just like one little thing, like the fishing? There's no fish, Jesus. You know we don't fish in the day. There's no fish in the day. We fish in the night. You think we went out all night just for the fun of it? That's when you catch the fish. If there were fish, we would have caught them. There wasn't any fish, so we didn't catch them. If you want to go fishing, Jesus, we take you tonight. Come back tonight, we take you out fishing tonight if you want to go fishing. But right now, we're tired, we're exhausted, we're going home for a nap. I mean, we realize not a problem for you, right? You show up here this morning all refreshed in your resurrected self, suggesting that we should go back on out there again. Maybe something like that. It's not recorded in the scriptures. Well, what Jesus was really saying had nothing to do with fish and nothing to do with fishing. What Jesus was really saying was, do you trust me? Do you trust me? Because if you trust me, you get back in the boats, you get the boats out in the deep water, let down the nets, and let's see what happens. And of course, the disciples did. They did trust him, so they did get back in the boats, and they did take the boats out in the deep water, and they did let down the nets, and they did catch so many fish, they almost sink the boats and break the nets. Now, the older I get, the less I know for sure. But there's one thing I know for sure today. Every man here, every single one of us, is looking for a great catch in some area of our lives. Every single one of us is looking for a great catch. Like the disciples got that day, they got a great catch. What sort of catch did they get? What sort of catch did they get? They got a great catch. And every single man here today, you're looking for a great catch in some area of your life. Maybe it's your marriage, maybe it's your health, maybe it's your finances, maybe it's your career, maybe it's in a relationship with one of your children. In some area of your life, you're looking for a great catch. Yes or yes? Yes. Let me tell you something. You don't get a catch like that in the shallow water. You don't get a catch like that in the shallow water. You want a catch like that? You got to get in your boat. You got to take that boat out into the deep water. Let down your nets for a great catch. Let down your nets for a great catch. The question is, are we willing to go out into the deep water? Willing to go out into the deep water to work out who we are and what we're here for and what matters most and what matters least, so that we can go out into the world and live with passion and purpose. One habit I want to give you today. Daily habit of silence. Daily habit of silence, daily habit of prayer, daily habit of reflection. How long? Don't know. You decide for yourself. I want you to create this daily habit of silence, because clarity emerges from silence. You've got questions. You want answers to your questions. Clarity emerges from silence. You know that intuitively, right? You're taking a bunch of people on a road trip. You're driving. You get a little bit lost. What do you say to the people? Right. You get them quiet. Because intuitively, you know that clarity emerges from silence. Intuitively. Instinctively. And yet we live in a noisy world, very, very noisy world, right? 1939, think about that. Second World War, 1939. What year? 1939, Second World War. C.S. Lewis is asked to write a weekly newspaper column. He decides to write a column that is a letter. It's a letter each week. And the letter's from a senior devil to a junior devil, coaching the junior devil how to be a really good devil. Okay, and the junior devil's trying to think of all sorts of creative ways to tempt humanity. And in one of the letters, the senior devil writes this junior devil a really stern letter, and he says, stop trying to be creative, just stick to the plan. And of course, the junior devil inquires back. He says, well, all right, well, what's the plan? Remind me what the plan is again. And this is what the senior devil said, okay? These are the words that C.S. Lewis put in the mouth of the devil in 1939. Junior devil says, remind me what the plan is. The senior devil says, our plan is very simple, and that is just to create so much noise in the world that man can no longer hear the voice of his God. 1939, 80 years ago. Our plan is very simple, and that is to create so much noise in the world that man can no longer hear the voice of his God. That's prophetic, right? That's modern prophecy. You look at what's happened in the last 80 years. That's exactly what's happened. Our lives have become so noisy. We can no longer hear the voice of God. It's a tough time for the church. Yes or yes? Yes. Anyone know what the answer is? Right, it's not some program, right? You know, it's not some program, it's not this, it's not that. It's people like you and me listening to the voice of God in our lives and following that voice. You read the Bible, most common preface to any sentence in the Bible, God said. God said to Adam, God said to Noah, God said to Moses, God said to Abraham, God said to Mary, God said to everybody. Is it that all of a sudden in these modern times God has stopped speaking? No. But we have both stopped listening and stopped creating an environment, we've stopped creating an environment where He can speak to us. Effective daily habit of silence. 10 minutes a day, 20 minutes a day, an hour a day, you decide how much you need. It might be different times at different times in your life. Try and do it at the same time every day. Because if you do that, if you create a rhythm, if you create that daily habit of silence, something astounding will happen, and that is you'll begin to hear the voice of God in your life. You know? A lot of people say, I don't hear the voice of God in my life. The medieval saints and grandma, she hears the voice of God in her life, but I don't hear the voice of God in my life. That's not really, no. No, you will. You begin to hear the voice of God in your life. Okay? We talk about God speaking to us in lots of ways. He speaks to us through, of course, the scriptures, through the life of the church, through the sacraments, through other people. But one of the ways that God speaks to us is just through the ordinary reality of our humanity. And that's what I want to talk to you about this morning. I want to talk to you about the three ordinary voices of God. God speaks to you every day in these three voices. Every single day of your life, no exception, God speaks to you. Not the guy next to you, not the guy behind you or in front of you, you. God speaks to you every single day in these three voices. The question is not, is God speaking? The question is, are we listening? Are we creating an environment where we can hear the voice of God in our lives? Three ordinary voices of God in our lives. The first ordinary voice of God is legitimate needs. What is the first ordinary voice of God? Legitimate needs. The first ordinary voice of God is legitimate needs. What is the first ordinary voice of God? Legitimate needs. Legitimate needs. You're a human being. You've got needs. If you don't eat, you will die. That is not going to happen to me. No, seriously. There are people on this planet that are going to die of starvation. I'm not going to be one of them. Okay, I'm working actively to make sure that that doesn't happen. And I can tell quite a few of you are as well. We got needs. We're human beings. We got needs. Who gave us the needs? God gave us the needs. You got needs in all four areas of the human person: physical, emotional, intellectual, and spiritual. Physical, pretty easy to understand. You don't eat, you die, you don't breathe, you die even quicker. You know, physically you've got legitimate needs to eat, to breathe, to sleep, for water, you know, to make your fat cry. You know, go down the gym, make your fat cry. You know, what do they call that? There's a word for that. What's the word? Extra fries? Extra fries, yeah. Oh, exercise. Yeah, it sounds the same, doesn't it? It's really close. Really, really close. No, you've got a legitimate need to go down to the gym, make your fat cry. I mean, that's what it is, right? When you sweat, that's your fat crying. That's just biological. I don't know what they teach you in biology class here in America, but in Australia, that's biology. When you sweat, that's actually your fat crying. What are you doing, honey? I'm going down the gym, make my fat cry. I make it weep today. Weep. That fat's going to be sorry it ever attached itself to me. So you got needs, physical. Emotionally, you got legitimate need for opportunities to love and be loved, a legitimate need to make a difference in other people's lives. Intellectually, you've got legitimate need to learn new things, to feed your mind, to nurture your mind, to expand your mind. And spiritually, you've got legitimate need for silence, solitude, scripture, sacraments. You got legitimate needs. And you're most fully alive when a good cross-section of these legitimate needs are being taken care of. Not all of them all the time. That's not realistic. That's not reality. That's not going to happen. But when a good cross-section of your legitimate needs are being taken care of, that's when we're in joy. That's when we experience joy. That's when we thrive. That's when we experience, what the great doctors of the church talked about as human flourishing. Human flourishing. That's a beautiful thing, right? Think about that as a concept. Say that for me, human flourishing. See, that ultimately is what God wants for you and for me and for your spouse and for your kids and for your neighbor. He wants us to flourish. He gives us the church. He gives us the life of the church. Help us flourish. It's a beautiful thing, And so you've got these needs. The problem is that they should be at the center of our lives. But we nudge them out towards the periphery of our lives. And then we forget about them. And the reason is because we live in a culture that is not interested in needs. We live in a culture that's obsessed with wants. We live in a culture that says the meaning of life is to get what you want. And when you get what you want, then you'll be happy. And the more you get of what you want, the happier you'll be. And so we think to ourselves, okay, I got to get what I want. And when I get what I want, I'm going to be happy. And when I get what I want, I'm going to be fulfilled. When I get what I want, I'm not going to feel so empty inside. When I get what I want, I'm just going to be incredibly happy when I get what I want. I've really got to focus on getting what I want. It's going to be amazing when I get what I want. It's just incredible when I get what I want. I just got to focus on getting my precious. And of course, that doesn't work. Getting what you want doesn't make you happy. You know that. You've had that experience. Why? Why doesn't the one thing work? The one thing doesn't work because, wow. Because you simply never can get enough of what you don't really need. It's impossible. You never can get enough of what you don't really need. Now, I'm not saying needs are good and wants are bad, because God gave you the ability to want, and now God's a God of purpose, and He does things on purpose, with purpose, for purpose. So if He gave you the ability to want things, then He gave it to you for a reason. We'll talk about that in a minute. I'm not saying needs are good and wants are bad, but what I am saying is that God loves order. What does God love? God loves order. Needs are primary, wants are secondary. Needs are primary and wants are secondary, and God loves order. We come to church on Sunday, we listen to the gospel. What does the gospel try to do? The gospel tries to rearrange our priorities. The gospel tries to rearrange our priorities. Why? Because that's what love does. When you fall in love, your priorities change. Fall in love, your priorities change. Love rearranges our priorities. What the gospel tries to do is tries to rearrange our priorities, tries to put our life back in order. So you come to church on Sunday, we listen to the gospel, and then God says, all right, let's take a look at you. All right, that doesn't go up there. That goes down there. This is the main thing. Let's put that up there. Let's switch these two. Move this one over here. Put that one up there and that one down there. And you have a good week, and I'll see you next week. And we come back again the next week. We listen to the gospel, and then God says to us, all right, let's take a look at you. All right, told you last week, that one doesn't belong up there. That one goes down there. This is the main thing. Let's try and keep the main thing. That stays up there. Switch these two. Move this one here, this one down here, this one there. You have a great week, and I'll see you again next week. We come back again the next Sunday. We listen to the gospel, and God says, all right, let's take a look at you. All right, but before we get started, On Tuesday afternoon at 3:47 p.m. on the corner of 3rd and Main in Starbucks, I heard you tell your friend that you were bored at Mass last Sunday. I heard that. There's a couple of things I want to talk to you about on that. First, if you're bored, imagine how bored I am with you. Right. Second, you wouldn't be bored if you lived last week's lesson. Okay? In fact, if you lived the lesson I've been giving to you every Sunday for 47 years, we can move on to lesson 2, but we're still stuck on lesson 1 with you. So I don't want to hear you telling anybody, anywhere, anytime, that you're bored at Mass, because I control the lightning. Now, let's take a look at you. That up there, how many times I got to tell you? That doesn't belong up there. That goes down there. This one, main thing. Put it up there, keep it up there, leave it up there. It's the main thing. Switch these two, move this one, put this one up here. There, have a great week. I'll see you next week. God is constantly trying to help us put our lives in order, rearrange our priorities. Why? So we can thrive. So we can thrive, so we can experience joy, so we can experience that human flourishing. So we can experience that human flourishing. Needs, primary. Wants, secondary. I'll give you an example. You get on the plane, right? You go on the plane, you got to listen to those stupid safety announcements. I mean, who invented those? Does anybody know? Nobody knows, right? Even Wikipedia doesn't know. Wikipedia knows everything. Get on the plane, okay. The other thing about the safety announcements, they always say if you've got questions, flight attendants will be in the aisles to answer the questions after the announcements. Have you ever seen them there? I'd never seen them there. I'd done a lot of flying, I'd never seen them there. I don't know where they are, probably up front having a vodka tonic. But they are not in the aisles to answer questions, and I got questions. Yeah, I got questions. Think about it, right? The first safety announcement, how to put on a seatbelt. Right. How to put on a seatbelt. Okay, and my first question, how did you get to the airport? Right. We got a lot of people walking up to Philadelphia International Airport. It's hard enough to drive to the place. No. In fact, if you don't know how to put on a seatbelt, get off the plane right now, all right? You're not fit to fly. You're not flying with me. If you don't know how to put on a seatbelt in a world where it's been illegal to travel in an automobile without a seatbelt for 60 years, get off the plane. Second safety announcement. In the event of a water landing, what is that? Because in Australia, we call that a crash. Right. We can't alarm anybody. We've got to keep everybody calm, right? In the event of a water landing, you got nothing to worry about. Okay? That's what they want you to know. That's the essence of the announcement. They say it so calmly. They say it so calmly. It makes it sound like if the pilot gets bored, he might do it on purpose. Ladies and gentlemen, in the event Captain gets bored today and decides to land his tube of metal traveling at 550 miles an hour on a random body of water, don't worry. You got absolutely nothing to worry about. And the reason you got nothing to worry about is because your seat cushion. Visualize that, right? Your seat cushion, which is about the size of a bag of regular M&Ms, not the family size. I mean a regular bag of M&Ms. It's been sat on by a collective tonnage of like 650 million tons of humanity has sat on that cushion, but you got nothing to worry about if we land in some water, because that's going to be your flotation device. And if you make it ashore, you can keep it as a souvenir of the experience. And of course, this is the one I talk about. This one I want to talk about. There's a message in this one. If cabin loses pressure, what will happen? Anybody know? That's right, oxygen masks come down in front of you. If you're traveling with a small child or infant, what are you instructed to do? Put your own on first, you bunch of pagans. Selfish, unchristian pagans. No, they know what they're talking about here. Put your own on first. Put your own on first. That's your legitimate needs. Your oxygen mask, that's your legitimate needs. Put your own on first. Why? Because God wants you to be selfish and self-centered and self-absorbed and make it all about you? No. Because God wants you to serve powerfully. What does God want you to do? He wants you to serve powerfully, and He wants you to serve powerfully for a long time. And you can't serve powerfully for a long time unless you put your oxygen mask on. You put your oxygen mask on first, there's no limit to the number of people you can help. Put your oxygen mask on first. Men are bad at this. Dads are bad at this. Put your oxygen mask on first. You've got legitimate needs, physically, emotionally, intellectually, spiritually. When you take care of a good cross-section of it, you thrive, you enjoy. And the people around you can tell. First ordinary voice of God, legitimate needs. He talks to you in this voice every day of your life. Second ordinary voice of God is talents and abilities. Talents and abilities. A lot of people think, I don't have any talents. You know, they say, I don't have any talents. It's not true, but there's a reason people think that way, and we'll talk about that in a minute. Truth is, you've got so many talents, you can't fully exercise even one of your talents in this lifetime. Fully exercise. Okay? Which is why it's essential from time to time that we turn to God and we say, all right, God, which talent do you want me to focus on at this time in my life? Which talent do you want me to focus on? Which of the many talents that you've given me do you want me to focus on at this time in my life? You see, God's given you these talents, and He's given you the perfect mix. And sometimes people say, well, I didn't get this talent, or I wish I was good at this, or my brother's good at this, or my dad was good at that, my sister got that, but my brother didn't get that, and I didn't get that, and I wish I got that. Forget it. If you don't have a talent, you don't need it. God's given you the perfect mix of talents that you need to make the journey that He created you for. He's given you the perfect mix of talents that you need to fulfill the mission that He created you for. If you don't have a talent, you don't need it. If you would have needed it, He would have given it to you. Two types of talents and abilities. Universal talent, what is that? Stuff we're all good at. Things like making a difference in other people's lives. It's an astounding talent. But we devalue it. What do? We devalue it. Why? Because everyone's got it. Oh, that can't be special. Everyone's got that. God's given out talents. He says, here you go, make a difference in other people's lives. It's like, what else you got, God? Give me something good. You know, I'm hearing all this stuff about how much you love me. Well, if you really love me, God, give me a great talent. And if you really, really love me, God, then you give me some extraordinary talent. And if you really, really, really love me, God, then you give me some incredible talent. And then you'll specifically not give that talent to anybody else ever again in the history of the world. And that's why we're obsessed with the second type of talent, which is unique talent. What is that? Unique talent. It's the ability to write a symphony like Beethoven or Mozart. It's the ability to paint a picture like Van Gogh or Monet or Picasso. It's the ability to hit a golf ball 350 yards straight. It's amazing how one word can change the meaning of everything, right? I mean, you were fine with the 350 yards. It's just the straight bit you struggle with, right? Yeah. Let me tell you about this fish I caught last week. A unique ability, the ability to invent something that changes the whole course of human history, the ability to cure a disease, the ability to throw a football the entire length of the football field if it's a little bit deflated. It's a very unique Northeastern ability. Our culture obsessed with these ones, right? Our culture's obsessed with these, what we call unique abilities. But when you put them side by side, let's say you're the best football player in the world, you put that side by side with making a difference in other people's lives, the football thing becomes trivial. Why? How do we know this? Because we look at the world, right? 90% of people who become phenomenally successful, who become incredibly wealthy, who become very famous, 90% of them, what do? They then turn around and go out and try to make a difference in other people's lives. Why is that? 90%. Why is it that people who become incredibly successful, very famous, very wealthy, the great majority of them then turn around and go out and try and make a difference in other people's lives? Why is that? The reason is because we're made for mission. What are we made for? Mission. We're made for mission. We're made for meaning. We're made for mission. That's why we're suffocating out there in that shallow, superficial world, because we're made for meaning. We're made for mission. We're created to make a difference in other people's lives. It's an incredible talent. You put those things side by side, that's called context, right? Context is a beautiful thing. Who's the best in the world at creating context? The church, been creating context for 2,000 years. Who's the worst in the world at creating context? The media hates context, never puts anything in context. Context is a beautiful thing. The reason context is a beautiful thing is because context shows us the true value of things. What does context show us? The true value of things. That's a really beautiful thing when you think about it. To know the true value of things is a beautiful thing. Context shows us the true value of things. Let's take another look at it. You're the best football player in the world, okay? The best football player in the world. And your 5-year-old son gets cancer. How important is football now? Right. You'd quit football, agree never to play football ever again if it would cure your son. Yes or yes? That's context. Context is a beautiful thing because it shows us what matters most and it shows us what matters least. Just like the gospel shows us what matters most and shows us what matters least. Just like the church shows us what matters most, shows us what matters least by putting things in context and showing us the true value of things. You've got talents, you've got abilities. God gave them to you for a reason. He's speaking to you through them. Not the guy next to you, well, him too, but He's speaking to you through your talents and abilities. When is the last time you turn to God and say, hey, God, what talent do you want me to focus on now? God's speaking to us, people. He is speaking to us. He wants to speak to us through your needs, through your talents. Third ordinary voice of God, deepest desire. Deepest desire. God's given you great desires for good things, right? He's placed these deep desires deep in your hearts. Problem is the world fills all our hearts and our souls with all these shallow, superficial desires, and we've got to dig through all the shallow, superficial desires to get down to the deep desires. Around lunchtime each day, I've got desires. I desire burgers. I desire fries. I desire Coke. Coca-Cola. Seriously, I don't want anyone going home confused about that. Yeah, I heard Matthew Kelly speak. Guess what he likes for lunch? Yeah, no. I desire burgers. I desire fries, you know. There's always other things on the menu, of course, like the rabbit food. Unfortunately, they segregate that stuff from my food, okay? Even on the menu, that stuff doesn't touch my food. And I like that. And you know what else I like? They're very thoughtful. They put all the rabbit food on its own page, and it's always at the front. So just flip over that. The problem is when you go to like a nice restaurant, like a fancy place, you know. The waiter comes up, he says, "Good evening, sir. Good evening. Would you like to have the harvest rabbit food this evening? Or would you prefer the Caesar bowl of weeds? Or would you like to have the Waldorf rabbit food? Or would you like to have our very special house bowl of weeds with our very special dirt dressing, which we make right here in the backyard. No, thank you. I'm sorry, sir, you don't want the house salad? No, I don't want the house salad. Which salad would you like, sir? No, you're not hearing me. I don't want the rabbit food. I don't want the bowl of weeds. I don't want that. I don't want to be rude, mate, but here's the thing. That's not my food. Eat it yourself, take it home to your rabbit, do whatever you want with it. I don't want it, okay? It's just not my food. It's not my food. I mean, it's not. That is not my food. That is the food that my food eats. Yeah, right there. So why don't you take that and feed it to my food and bring me my food? So we got a lot of shallow, superficial desires, right? So we've got to dig through all the shallow, superficial desires, get down to the deep desires. That's where God speaks to us. He speaks to us in those deep desires. You ever notice you've got these deep desires for good things, and you've had them for a long time? You've probably had them as long as you've been paying attention. You had them probably before you started paying attention. Okay? And here's the thing. They're not going away. Those deep, deep, deep desires, your deepest desires for good things, they are not going away. You're going away before they go away. So what is that deep, deep desire? And what is God saying to you through that deep desire? Because He's speaking to you through those deep desires for good things. Needs, talents, desires. God's speaking to you. God's speaking to you. You know, difficult time in the church? Yeah. It's the answer. We've got to start listening to the voice of God in our lives again, right? We all say, I want this for my parish. Or I think we should do this. I don't care what you think we should do. I care what He thinks we should do. But we don't ask the question. We don't ask the question. When's the last time we said, okay, let's as a parish pray about what God is asking us to do as a parish? No, we turned our parishes into country clubs. It's like, I want this, you know. Let's get a new pool. As a parish, yeah, let's get a new pool anyway. What kind of parish is that? We'll pretend it's a baptismal font. This is what I know, right? The world needs changing. Everybody knows that. Nobody argues with that. Nobody says, no, the world's in great shape. It's moving in a great direction. Hands off, everybody. Let's just let it do its thing. Everything's great. No. The world needs changing. Everybody knows that. The scary thing is, nobody's in a better position to change the world than Catholics. I would argue if we don't do it, it won't happen. We got to get our act together. Because we're in a horrible position to change the world right now. Yes or yes? So if like we're the world's great white hope, we're in trouble, yeah? When the church is in trouble, the world is in trouble. When the church is in trouble, humanity is in trouble. That's what we've forgotten as a society. Because yes, there have been dark moments in the church. Yes, horrible things have happened in the church. But every single day, the Catholic Church feeds more people, houses more people, clothes more people, visits more imprisoned people, takes care of more sick people, and educates more people, Catholic and non-Catholic, than any other institution on the planet Earth. And who's going to... So when they're finished tearing down the church, who's going to feed the hungry? Who's going to visit the lonely? Who's going to educate the poor? Who's going to visit the imprisoned? Who's going to take care of the sick? That's what they don't realize. When the church is in trouble, the world is in trouble. When the church is in trouble, humanity is in trouble. And the church is in trouble, and the world is in trouble, and humanity is in trouble. We've got to get our act together because the world needs changing. Good news is, we already did it once. Our ancestors changed the world. The first Christians, they changed the world. How did they do that? They have some great meeting with people from every country on the planet, put together a 600-page strategic plan with a 28-page executive summary, send everyone out with their little instruction what to do. No. How did they do it? They live differently, they love differently, they work differently. That's it. They live differently, they love differently, they work differently. That's what you're called to do as a man of God. Live differently, love differently, work differently. People should see you at work and be able to say, I can tell you're Catholic just by the way you work. That's how strong our identity should be. Why? Because if we really lived our faith in a workplace, we'd work differently. We'd work harder than most. We'd work better than most. We'd pay attention to the details of our work more than anybody else. And if nothing else, if we just took that one line of the gospel seriously, that whatever we do for another person, we do for Jesus, if nothing else, we would give the best customer service in the world. Yes or yes? Called to live differently, to love differently, to work differently. And when we do, people are intrigued, and that's what the first Christians had. People were intrigued. People were intrigued with the first Christians. They were fascinated with them. Because why? The culture was cold, harsh, brutal. Think about first century. Okay, the culture was hard, cold, harsh, brutal, impersonal. Along come the Christians. They're warm, inviting, loving, caring, thoughtful, generous. The contrast is massive. Interestingly, our culture is becoming increasingly like the first century, yes? Our culture is becoming cold, hard, harsh, impersonal, brutal. Our culture is becoming brutal. The brutality of our culture is astounding. Becoming more and more like the first century. That actually creates a Christian opportunity because the contrast between that and Christianity when it's actually lived is enormous. It's an enormous contrast when it's actually lived. The problem is, most Christians don't believe we can change the world. Most Christians believe culture's got too strong, culture's got too bad, ain't nothing we can do about it. We've fallen into an indifference and a complacency because we don't actually believe we can change the world. And now we're right at the heart of the issue. The heart of the issue. How did we get so mediocre? How did we get so mediocre? Well, we accepted the biggest lie in the history of Christianity. The biggest lie in the history of Christianity, holiness is not possible for me. Once we stop believing holiness is not possible, there's nowhere to go but the mediocre middle. And we've gone there quickly, in droves. Yes or yes? We don't believe holiness is possible anymore. The first Christians did. And there's something about it. You know, they can attack the church. Sure, attack the church. There's a lot of things that can be attacked. But there's some things about our faith that are completely untouchable. My favorite is this. There's nothing more attractive than holiness. When somebody actually lives the stuff, it's incredibly potent, it's powerful, it's influential, it's attractive, it changes lives. There's nothing more attractive than holiness, and it's not like you need like 100 really holy people in one parish to get it done, right? You take one guy, put him in a brown robe, you take one guy, put him in a brown robe, drop him in the middle of Italy, in the Middle Ages, call him Francis, and bam, you got it. Still impacting, changing. Francis of Assisi is still changing lives today. Yes or yes? Why? Because there's nothing more attractive than holiness. And who loved Francis? Who loves Francis? Well, only Catholics, right? No? No. Men and women of all faith love Francis of Assisi. Men and women with no faith love Francis of Assisi. Why? There's nothing more attractive than holiness. Holiness cuts through the prejudice. It just slices through the bias. It just breaks through every barrier. Nothing more attractive than holiness. You take Mother Teresa, 5 foot nothing, drop her down there in the middle of Calcutta on the least Christian continent on the planet, and bam, you got it. Still changing people's lives today. Who love Mother Teresa? Only Catholics? No. Men and women of all faith, men and women of no faith. Why? Because there's nothing more attractive than holiness. So here's the question. Is holiness possible for you and me? Because if it isn't, we should pack up and go home. You know what the sad thing is? It won't take me 90 seconds to completely debunk the biggest lie in the history of Christianity. It won't take me 90 seconds. I mean, depending how slow you people are. Let's take a look. If you're with me, say, uh-huh. All right. Let's say I say to you, go out tomorrow and create one holy moment. One holy moment, not a holy day, not a holy hour, not a holy 15 minutes, one single holy moment. You say, all right, what's a holy moment? I say, a holy moment is a moment where you set aside self-interest, where you set aside what you feel like doing, what you want to do. You do exactly what you feel God is calling you to do in that moment. You collaborate with God and you create a holy moment. You say, okay, I think I've got it. Tell me one more time, though. Okay. What's a holy moment? Holy moment is a moment where you set aside self-interest, you set aside what you feel like doing, what you want to do. You do exactly what you feel God is calling you to do in that moment. You collaborate with God and create a holy moment. You say, okay, I got it. Good. Go out there tomorrow and create a holy moment. There's no man here who can't do that. There's no man here who can say, it was too academic. It was completely above my head. I had no idea what he was talking about. It's like, what does he think? I got a doctorate in theology or something? I got no idea. It was just completely cerebral and academic. No. There's no man here who can say, oh, that Mathew Kelly, what a Pharisee. He's placing heavy burdens on us. He's like talking about a whole moment. Man, Pharisee from Australia. No, in fact, the opposite, right? When we think about it in terms of a moment, our natural reaction is to say, I can do that. I can do that. You can go out there tomorrow and create one holy moment, collaborate with God and create one holy moment. And if you can collaborate with God and create one holy moment tomorrow, you can create 2 on Tuesday and 4 next Thursday and as many as you want next Saturday. All that's required is intentionality. Holiness is possible. It's possible. For you, for me, one moment at a time, holiness is possible. Here's the thing. What does the world need? What does your family need? What does your marriage need? What does your workplace need? What does your friends need? What do your neighbors need? What does our nation need? Holy moments. Holy moments. If you're with me, say, uh-huh. Holy moments. How will we change the world? One at a time. One holy moment at a time. How will you change your life? How will you transform your marriage? How will you transform your family? How will you transform that relationship that's not working out so good with one of your kids or one of your parents or one of your friends? One holy moment at a time. Holiness is possible. What's the danger? Excuses. We're human beings. We're really good at making excuses. But at the end of the day, at the end of people's lives, all our excuses, they get thrown into 2 buckets. Most people spend the first half of their life saying, I'm too young for that stuff. And they spend the second half of their life saying, I'm too old for that stuff now. Don't let those be your excuses. Tiger Woods was 3 years old when he first broke 50 for 9 holes of golf. Mozart was 8 years old when he wrote his first symphony. Charles Dickens was 12 years old when he quit school to work in a factory pasting labels on shoe polish. Why? His father had been in prison. He couldn't pay his debts. Dickens needed money to get his father out of jail. Anne Frank was 13 years old when she began her diary. Ralph Waldo Emerson was 14 years old when he enrolled at Harvard. Paul McCartney was 15 years old when John Lennon invited him to join a band. Bill Gates was 19 years old when he co-founded Microsoft. Joe DiMaggio was 26 years old when he hit safely for 56 consecutive games without steroids. We got to mention that, right? You got to mention that. You got to mention that, because otherwise you get the little symbol. What's that? The asterisk. You get the asterisk. So you got to mention that, you know. But he didn't need steroids. He had Marilyn Monroe. Well, you got to mention that, right? Because you get two asterisks right there. William Shakespeare was 31 years old when he wrote Romeo and Juliet. Thomas Jefferson was 33 years old when he wrote the Declaration of Independence. Think about that. What kind of culture produces a 33-year-old capable of writing the Declaration of Independence? And how do we get that back? Mother Teresa was 40 years old when she began her work in Calcutta. Important word, began. Why? Because as we talked about when we began, human beings, we have a tendency to get caught up in our own little worlds. When we get caught up in our own little worlds, we think to ourselves, oh yeah, Mother Teresa, she spent her whole life down there in Calcutta taking care of those poor people, right? Wrong. She started that when she was 40. Before that, she was a school teacher. Pablo Picasso was 55 years old when he painted Guernica, began a new era in the arts. Dom Perignon, 60 years old when he produced the first glass of champagne. Oscar Hammerstein was 64 years old when he decided to try something new and wrote The Sound of Music. Winston Churchill was 65 years old when he became Britain's Prime Minister and picked a fight with Hitler because everyone knew it needed to be done, but nobody wanted to do it. Nelson Mandela, 71 years old when he was released from more than 20 years in South African prison. 4 years later, at the age of 75, Mandela's elected president of South Africa. Michelangelo, 71 years old when he produced the dome of St. Peter's Basilica in Rome, and 24 years old when he carved David. Benjamin Franklin was 79 years old when he invented bifocals. Frank Lloyd Wright was 91 years old when he finished his work on the Guggenheim Museum. Dimitri Jordandas was 98 years old when he ran the Athens Marathon. And Orichi Raya was 100 years old when he climbed Mount Fuji. So don't say I'm too old. Don't say I'm too young. Now is our time. Now is our time. Why do I tell you about these things? Why do I tell you about these people? They're not Catholics. Most of them not Catholics. Most of them not even doing Christian stuff. But all of them extraordinary feats. Yes or yes? And I tell you about them to remind us of one fundamental truth. Human beings, you and me, are capable of incredible things. We're capable of incredible things. But very often we don't even scratch the surface. Because we don't take that time to create that daily habit of silence, to listen to the voice of God in our lives, to really honor our needs, talents, desires, to walk with Him. We don't do that. You know, if you look at history, you look at the people God chooses to do incredible things, I mean, astounding things. He never picks the people you and I would pick. He almost never picks the best educated. He almost never picks the people in positions of power and authority. He almost never picks the most talented. He almost never picks the people you and I would pick. So when God is looking for somebody to send them out on a great mission, what does He look for in a resume? Only one thing. Availability. Availability. You're going to have some time here to reflect the next couple of hours. I want to give you a question to reflect upon. How available are you to God at this time in your life? 20%, 50%, 80%, 96.4%? How available are you to God at this time in your life? And what's the risk of making yourself 100% available to God and seeing what happens? What's the risk? What's the downside? Why are we holding out on God? Where's the wisdom in holding out on God? Where's the wisdom in holding back from God? And what's the risk? Making ourselves 100% available to God and seeing what happens. Doesn't work out, you can change your mind. Where's the risk? It's all upside. I want you to think about that. How available are you to God at this time in your life? Okay? And then, while you're waiting in line for reconciliation, or during the holy hour a little later with Mark, I want you to pray a prayer of transformation. It's the one prayer God always answers. Yeah, sometimes you pray prayers, God doesn't answer them. You don't know why He didn't answer them, but He doesn't answer them. But there's one prayer God always answers. It's the prayer of transformation. We come to God and we say, all right, God, I'm 100% available to you. Transform me, transform my life. Everything's on the table. Take what you want to take, give what you want to give. I'll do whatever you ask me to. Just show me, lead me, coach me, guide me, mentor me. Make yourself 100% available to God. Pray a prayer of transformation. But, warning, you pray that prayer, you better get ready. You better get ready, you pray that prayer. Because never once in the history of the world did God answer that prayer. Never once in the history of the world did God not answer that prayer. The world needs changing. One holy moment at a time. Who's going to do it? Because if not you and me, then who and when? Because it's past time already. It is past time already. Don't say I'm too old. Don't say I'm too young. That's God's problem. His problem to work out how to use you powerfully. Don't say I'm too old. Don't say I'm too young. Now is our time. Now is our time. When is our time? God bless you. Great to be with you.